8 keys to healthy boundaries. Key number 1. What are healthy boundaries?
Quietly I wish that I could make it true.
Hello, lovelies. It's Tiina here from Own, Kind and Wonderful, helping you reclaim who you truly are. So, key number 1 for our boundaries series. What are healthy boundaries? And I'm so excited about this series because this is a biggie. This really is a biggie. And especially for my client kind of demographic, who are high-performing, ambitious, creative, heart-centered women, this one comes up all the time. But I know that it comes up for others as well. And my personal story behind boundaries is, lack of boundaries, really. But I have to say, not in all areas of life. So let's start there. Like boundaries, there's different kinds of boundaries. Many of us think about boundaries as physical boundaries, but there are other kinds of boundaries as well. So let's get clarity on that. So we've got material boundaries, my stuff, my things, my home. What kind of boundaries do I have around those things? Physical boundaries, of course, my physical body. And that one's quite easy to understand, those boundaries. We've got emotional boundaries, feelings, and how do I want to be treated, for example, when I am low, and how do I treat or behave around others who might need emotional support? Do I respect their boundaries? I give you an example. I am quite quick to want to hug someone who's sad, but that's maybe not what they want and need, right? So that's an emotional boundary, like, okay, yeah, I'm sad, but leave me alone. Like, I just want to sit here and cry and you can sit there. Okay. Mental boundaries, values, opinions, and so on. Now, for example, a situation could be that you're having a discussion with someone and they go quite hardball on really diminishing your opinion of something or your belief in something. And there's a boundary that, like, that is, how okay is that? And really, boundaries, it's really simple in many ways. It's like, what is okay and what is not okay for me in certain situations, with certain people, etc. Okay, what is okay, what is not okay? Now, for me, in certain areas of my life, I've had very weak boundaries, meaning that I haven't been able to say no or voice my opinion or my feelings about something. For example, in romantic relationships, I've always thought, well, I haven't even known on an emotional level what questions I can ask or what I can raise in, like, this does not feel good. And I've always thought, no, I need to be quiet about that because that's I'm probably too needy, I'm being silly, and all of those things. And probably somewhere along the line I have heard that, that when I have voiced something, it's like, oh, don't be silly, oh, that's ridiculous, Whereas I can remember at school when we had discussions about something where my opinion was very strong about something. My gosh, there was nothing that would stop me. I would be like, no, this is okay for me, this is not okay for me. And I made it very clear, and I had no problem in that. So it can look very different in different situations and with different people. So that's something important to consider. So we can have healthy boundaries, we can have weak boundaries, and we can have rigid boundaries. Now, definitely we're going to go into rigid boundaries in this series, probably more than I actually think at the moment. My feeling is that we'll probably focus a bit more on the weak boundaries because that is what I can see quite often in my own clients and also in my friends, and when I read articles and then I'm on Facebook and things like that. What are healthy boundaries then? Well, you're able to say no when you want to say no, and yes when you want to say yes. So, of course, Those with weak boundaries tend to be the people who kind of go, yes, of course I can do that. And then afterwards feel resentful and angry and frustrated because, oh, yet again, I've said yes to something. I'm so stressed. I don't have time for myself. And I'm just doing these things for other people because I'm saying yes all the time because I don't know how to say no. Whereas rigid, it's the ability to say no is very good, but sometimes you miss out on things because you never open up and say, oh, that might be interesting actually to get involved in, for example, right? And it's of course not just about knowing the yes or no and okay and not okay. It's the ability to communicate these things as well, right? Sometimes we can have boundaries that radiate out of us, that we don't have to actually voice them, but very often we need to communicate them. And actually, when we communicate our boundaries, and I'm not talking about being angry about it or shouting about it, it's just making simple requests. And that kind of creates an ease in relationships. Like, okay, so I know where I stand, I know where you stand, I know what's okay for you and what's not okay. And it's not like when you are clear with a boundary, this is not okay for me. It's not like, the whole world might not respect that, but then it's a question of, okay, those people who don't respect it, do I want them in my life or not, right? Healthy boundaries, not doing anything against your own will, of course. Questioning things that don't feel right. Like I said about romantic relationships, when I'm kind of like, am I even allowed to question this? Yes, you are always allowed to question things. Always. It's like, this doesn't feel right, good for me. Can we talk about it? Like, always allowed to question things. And that I'm saying that like 15 times because it was such a big learning for me. So making simple requests, you can always make a request saying, you know what, this is important for me. Again, not sure that everybody will say, oh yes, of course, but there can be communication around that. Healthy boundaries, self-love and self-respect, of course, is all part of that. I have written something interesting here, and I'm just going to read it. Healthy boundaries allows for intimacy and closeness, but not enmeshment. Okay, you don't have to kind of do that. You can do that together. Knowing what's okay for you and not okay for you. Knowing when to say no and when to say yes. Being able to communicate them in a good way. Next time, we're going to look at something, which I can't remember what we're going to look at. We're going to look at weak boundaries. Okay, so next time we're focusing in on weak boundaries, really kind of digging deeper there. And then after that, we'll obviously go into rigid boundaries. So, has this in any way been useful to you? Do share it with others. If you kind of think, such and such and such needs to know more about boundaries, I'll send them this. Please do. And do subscribe. And as I said, the next episode, weak boundaries. See you then.